Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're exploring how faith can impact your life, and we're focusing on an article from Positive Affirmations called Faith in God's Promises, Trusting His Word in Life's Journey.
Great topic.
It is, right?
Yeah.
The article even suggests there's a link between faith and being successful in your career.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we'll be looking into that.
Okay.
We'll also be talking about how faith shapes things like personal growth and your relationships. This article really covers it all.
Yeah.
It starts with some key takeaways and then looks at how faith plays a part in different areas of your life. Then it finishes up with some practical tips.
That's great.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people wonder how to actually apply these concepts to their daily lives.
exactly. So this article seems like a great resource for that.
It does.
The article defines faith as not a passive hope. It's an active trust in God's character and His Word. That active trust part stood out to me.
Yeah, active trust is a really important distinction.
What makes that so important?
Well, think about it like building trust with another person. It's not enough to just say, hey, I trust you.
Right.
You actually have to show it.
Right. You have to prove it somehow.
Right. Through your actions, through being consistent, through being willing to be vulnerable.
Mm.
Faith is similar. It's not just about believing, but about actually doing something with that belief.
Yeah.
Aligning our actions with what we say we believe.
Okay, so it's less about hoping for the best and more about actually taking a step forward.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stepping out in faith, knowing you have that support.
Yeah, I like that. And the article uses a great example from the Bible to show this.
Oh, which one?
The story of Mary.
From Luke.
Yeah, from Luke 1.45.
Oh, yeah. Mary's story is a fantastic example of this in action.
In what way?
Well, think about her situation. She's a young woman, unmarried, and finds out she's going to have a baby.
And in that time, that was a huge deal.
Oh, absolutely. The societal pressures were immense.
Yeah.
But even with all that, when she's told she'll give birth to the Messiah, she chooses to trust God. Wow.
It's pretty incredible when you think about the potential consequences she faced.
Yeah, she definitely could have lost everything.
Absolutely. Her story really shows how much courage it takes to step out in faith like that.
It definitely makes you think about what you would do in that kind of situation. I mean, faith is not for the faint of heart, right?
Definitely not. It requires a certain level of boldness, I think.
And speaking of challenges, the article goes into how fear and doubt can sometimes keep us from experiencing the good things that come with faith.
Oh yeah, fear and doubt. Those are big ones.
Definitely. Have you ever felt that, like that tension between your faith and those feelings of doubt?
Oh, absolutely. I think we all face moments of doubt. It's part of being human.
Right.
But the key is how we respond to it. We don't have to let those feelings control us.
So what can we do when doubt creeps in?
The article emphasizes a few things like prayer, studying scripture, and surrounding yourself with a supportive community.
It's like creating a space where faith can actually thrive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like an ecosystem for your faith. I love that analogy. And speaking of support, there's this story in the article about Maria. She's a single mom who loses her job, and she's struggling financially. But she leans into her faith, and things start to turn around for her.
I remember that story. What happens to her?
Well, through her network of friends, she actually gets a new job offer.
Wow, that's awesome.
It is. Her story really shows how faith can have a real impact.
Absolutely. And you know what's really interesting about that story?
What?
It's not that faith just magically solved all her problems, but it helped her to see things differently.
So it's not just about the situation changing, but about how you view it.
Exactly. When things were tough, her faith helped her see the possibilities instead of just focusing on the dead ends.
So it's about having that internal shift.
Yeah, that shift in perspective is so powerful.
It really is. It's like choosing to see the good even when things are hard. But let me ask you something. How does faith play a role at work? It almost feels like it belongs more in your personal life, not in the middle of deadlines and meetings.
That's a great question, and it's one a lot of people have.
Yeah.
The article talks about how faith can actually be a source of strength and guidance in our careers.
Really?
Yeah. It can give us the power to make bold decisions, to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's hard.
I like that. I'm thinking about that story of James, the entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah, James. What about him?
He decided to follow his passion and left his job to start his own business. That must have taken so much faith.
It definitely would. Leaving a stable job to pursue something unknown is a huge risk.
And there had to be some fear involved.
Of course. But I think that's where faith comes in.
How so?
It's not about ignoring the fear, but about having something stronger to help you overcome it.
So it's not the absence of fear, but having something even more powerful to counterbalance it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating. But, sometimes I struggle with this whole idea of trusting God's promises because sometimes it feels like my prayers aren't answered.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah. So how does that fit with this whole trusting thing?
Well, that's where this idea of God's timing comes in.
What does that mean?
It means sometimes things don't happen on our schedule.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they won't happen at all.
Okay, so just because things aren't happening when we want them to doesn't mean they're not going to happen.
Exactly. Sometimes it's about learning to be patient.
Oh, patience. That's a tough one.
It is. But I think it's one of the most important things that faith can teach us.
It is.
Learning to trust that God has a bigger plan.
Yeah.
Even if we don't understand it right now.
That waiting period can be so frustrating, though.
It definitely can be. But maybe there's a reason for it,
Like what?
Maybe it's a chance for us to grow, to reflect, to learn something new.
Okay, so maybe those delays aren't always a bad thing.
Maybe not.
The article talks about how living with faith can bring certain blessings, things like peace, guidance, and strength.
Right. And those are all so valuable.
Have you experienced those things in your own life?
Definitely. I can remember going through a really challenging time in my life. Like, logically, I should have been completely stressed out. But for some reason, I felt this sense of peace. And looking back, I think it was because of my faith.
So it's like, even though things are tough, you have this inner peace to help you through.
Yeah. It's not about avoiding tough situations, but facing them with a different mindset.
I like that. That's powerful.
It's a deep trust that even when things are hard, there's a bigger purpose at play.
It makes you feel like you're not alone in those tough times.
Absolutely. It's a powerful feeling.
It is. So how can our listeners put all of this into practice? I mean, it's great to talk about these concepts, but how do they actually live them out?
Well, the article has a section called Faith in Action that has some practical suggestions.
It's kind of suggestions.
Things like setting aside time each morning for prayer or reflection.
Okay.
It also suggests journaling about things you're grateful for.
Gratitude is so important.
It is.
Yeah.
And another suggestion is to find ways to serve others.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
So it sounds like there are a lot of different ways to put faith into action.
There are. And it's about finding what works best for you.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Exactly. It's a personal journey.
Well, we've covered a lot in this first part of our deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how faith is an active choice, not just a passive hope.
Yeah.
And we looked at how it shows up in our personal lives, even when we face things like fear and doubt.
Right.
We even started talking about how faith can show up in our work lives, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, it's not something we always think about.
What stands out to you from what we've talked about so far?
I think what really resonated with me is this idea that faith isn't about avoiding the hard things in life.
Yeah.
It's about having the strength to face those challenges.
Knowing that you're not alone.
Exactly.
And that's powerful.
It is.
As we move into the next part of our deep dive, I want you to think about something. What if including faith in your daily life, even in small ways, could actually bring you more peace and a sense of purpose?
That's a good question. I'll definitely be thinking about that.
We'll be back soon to continue unpacking these ideas and explore more from the article. Stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. It's interesting to think about how these small acts of faith can actually make a big difference.
You mean like the little things we do every day?
Yeah, exactly. Like even the choices that seem small can have a big impact if they're guided by faith.
So it's not just about the big dramatic moments.
Right, it's about how we live our lives every day.
Okay, I get it.
Like choosing to see the good in others, even when it's hard.
Yeah, that can be tough.
Or speaking up for what's right, even when it feels uncomfortable.
Those are great examples. It's like planting a seed, right?
Exactly. You might not see the results right away, but with time, something beautiful can grow.
And that takes faith to keep nurturing that seed even when you don't see immediate results.
It does. And, the article talks about how faith can be a source of strength during tough times, like when things are uncertain or when you're facing adversity.
Right, it's like having an anchor when you're in a storm.
Exactly. When everything feels chaotic, faith can keep you grounded.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
It's like a reminder that you're not alone in the storm.
Exactly. That there's something bigger holding you steady.
But, sometimes that guidance can be a bit mysterious.
In what way?
Well, like we were talking about before, sometimes it feels like our prayers aren't answered.
Yeah, that's definitely a common experience.
Or things don't go according to plan.
Right, right. So how do we reconcile that with this idea of trusting in God's promises? It can be confusing.
It can be.
It really can. I think that's where surrender comes in.
Surrender, that's a powerful word. What does that mean in this context?
Well, it's about recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
So we don't have to have it all figured out.
It's about letting go of our need to control everything and trusting that there's a higher wisdom at work.
Okay, so it's not about giving up, but about letting go.
Exactly. It can be hard, but it can also be incredibly freeing.
It sounds like it would take a lot of humility to really surrender.
It does. It takes a deep level of trust.
It reminds me of that saying, sometimes the greatest blessings come in disguise.
Oh, I love that quote. It's so true. What we might see as a setback could actually be a redirection.
Right, like a chance to learn and grow in a way we hadn't planned on.
Absolutely. It's all about perspective.
So even when things are tough, we can choose to look for the lessons, the growth, the silver linings.
Yeah, and I think that's a really powerful choice to make.
We've been focusing on the positive aspects of faith. But what about the struggles?
Like, what do you mean?
What about when doubts creep in?
Oh, yeah. Those are inevitable.
What about when we feel like our faith is being tested?
Those are hard moments for sure.
How do we navigate those times?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that doubt is a normal part of the human experience.
Okay, so it's okay to have doubts.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean you're a bad person or that your faith is weak.
So we don't have to pretend that everything's okay when it's not.
Right. And sometimes wrestling with those questions can actually make our faith stronger.
How so?
It forces us to really examine what we believe and why.
It's like digging deeper.
Yeah. And sometimes that might mean reaching out to someone we trust, like a mentor or a spiritual leader.
To get some guidance?
Yeah. And sometimes it might just mean spending more time in reflection, trying to reconnect with our own inner wisdom.
And having a supportive community can be really helpful too, right?
Oh, absolutely. We're not meant to go through this alone. Sharing our struggles, offering encouragement, and seeking support from others can make a world of difference.
It's like we're all in this together.
Exactly. We can learn so much from each other's experiences.
You know, it's interesting how these conversations about faith can bring people together.
Yeah, I've definitely found that to be true.
Even if people have different beliefs or perspectives.
Right. At the end of the day, we're all searching for meaning and purpose.
We all want to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And those shared longings can create a sense of connection, even across differences.
It's like finding common ground in our shared humanity.
I love that. And you know, in a world that often feels so divided, I think those moments of connection are more important than ever.
I agree. Well, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm struck by this idea that faith isn't just about what we believe, but about how we live.
It's about putting those beliefs into action.
And about how we treat each other.
Exactly. Faith is a way of life.
It makes you wonder what the world would be like if we all approached life with that kind of faith.
It's a beautiful thought. And as we move into the final part of our deep dive, I want you to consider this. What if living out our faith, even in small ways, could actually make the world a better place?
That's something we'll definitely be exploring further. Stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll talk about how we can all continue to cultivate and live out our faith in meaningful ways. Welcome back to our deep dive on faith. We've covered so much ground already, from the challenges of doubt to the power of surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
It's been a really insightful conversation.
It has. You know, the article Faith in God's Promises shares the story of James, an entrepreneur who took a big leap of faith and left his job to pursue his passion. What did you think about his story?
Well, leaving a secure job is a scary thing for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can't imagine just walking away from that.
It takes guts, for sure.
It does. What do you think helped him make that decision?
I think it was his faith that gave him the courage to step outside his comfort zone.
So it's not about knowing all the answers, but about trusting that you'll be guided along the way.
Exactly. It's like that saying, faith is taking the first step, even when you don't see the whole staircase.
That's a good one. But it's still hard, right, to deal with that uncertainty, that feeling of not knowing what's coming next.
It is, and that's where surrender comes in, like we were talking about before. It's about letting go of our need to control every outcome.
So we have to admit that we don't always have the answers.
Right, and we have to trust that something bigger is at work, even if we don't understand it fully.
It sounds like surrender can actually be a really positive thing.
It can be. It can bring a sense of peace. Even excitement?
Excitement?
Yeah, because you're open to the possibility that something amazing is going to happen, something you couldn't have planned for on your own.
That makes sense. It's like opening yourself up to possibilities. And sometimes that guidance, that sense of direction, can come in unexpected ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like a chance meeting or a book you stumble upon, or even a conversation that sparks a new idea.
Yeah.
How can we be more open to those subtle signs, those little nudges from the universe, or maybe something bigger?
I think it starts with paying attention to your inner voice, your intuition, those gut feelings that tell you something's right or wrong.
So we have to listen to those inner whispers.
Exactly. And sometimes it's about noticing the synchronicities, those moments where things just seem to fall into place.
It's like the universe is trying to tell us something. But what about when things are really tough? When we're facing things like suffering or loss or injustice, how does faith help us in those moments?
That's a really deep question.
It is. Because sometimes it feels like faith isn't enough.
I think it's important to remember that faith doesn't mean we won't experience pain or suffering.
So it's not about pretending everything's okay when it's not.
Exactly. It's about holding on to that belief, that hope, even when things are dark. It's about trusting that there's a bigger picture, even if we can't see it right now.
And maybe it's about finding strength in that belief to keep going, even when it's hard.
Absolutely. Faith can be a source of comfort and resilience in those difficult times.
And it can inspire us to help others who are going through similar challenges.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected, that we're not alone in this.
This whole conversation has really highlighted that faith isn't just about personal beliefs. It's about how we connect with others and make the world a better place.
It's about living our values, letting our actions speak louder than our words.
So it's not enough to just believe in something. We have to actually live it out.
Exactly. And even the smallest actions can make a difference. A kind word, a helping hand, choosing to approach each day with love and generosity.
It's inspiring to think that those small acts can create a ripple effect, spreading kindness and compassion throughout the world.
It is. And as we wrap up this deep dive into faith, I want to leave you with this thought. The journey of faith is a lifelong adventure.
It's not about reaching a destination, but about embracing the journey.
Exactly. So stay curious, stay open, and trust that you're being guided every step of the way.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into faith. We hope it's inspired you to explore the power of belief in your own life and to see the impact even small acts of faith can have.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.